This is McAruthur Wheeler. On January 6, 1995, he robbed a branch of Fidelity Bank in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania without covering his face. On the same day, with his increasing self-confidence, he robbed another bank in Pittsburgh. But he was arrested on April 21st, only 1 hour after CCTV footage of the bank was released on TV. I mean, seriously, what did he think would happen? No mask? No nothing? Why did he do this? When police told McAruthur how they identified him, McAruthur didn't believe them. But after showing him the CCTV videos, McAruthur was shocked. He whispered, "But I wore the juice. I wore the lemon juice." Apparently, he thought that if he wore lemon juice on his face would be invisible to cameras. So this video's questions are: why lemon juice? Why didn't he realize his idea was stupid? Can this happen to us? To be too ignorant and stupid, not realizing we are doing very badly? And if so, how can we avoid this? Lemon juice contains acids and organic compounds. If you take a fresh lemon juice and write a message with it on a paper and let it dry, your message will be invisible. But after heating the paper, the dried acids and chemicals oxidize and turn brown. Your invisible message becomes visible. It is obvious that there is an impossible leap from an invisible message on a paper to an invisible face in the camera, and yet he failed to notice it. The lemon juice idea came from Clifton Earl Johnson, McAruthur's accomplice. Wheeler claimed that he tested the juice idea using a Polaroid camera and found himself missing in the photo. But it did not occur to him that the camera might have been broken and their idea was simply stupid. So why didn't he realize his mistake? In 1999, Dr. Dunning and Dr. Kruger, researchers at Cornell University Department of Psychology, asked the same question and published the answers in a paper titled "Unskilled and Unaware of It: How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence Leads to Inflated Self-Assessments." They argued that for you to be successful in any aspect of your life, be it raising your children, your job, your academic research, robbing a bank, or starting a YouTube channel like me, you would need a certain level of knowledge. Also, people are different in their levels of knowledge and strategies they utilize. This will result in their varied failure or success in any given field. Sometimes we come up with good ideas and execute them properly using appropriate strategies, and sometimes, perhaps most of the times, we come up with bad ideas, use wrong strategies, or both, and fail miserably. Their third point was the focus of their paper. We argue that when people are incompetent in the strategies they adopt to achieve success and satisfaction, they suffer a dual burden. Not only do they reach erroneous conclusions and make unfortunate choices, but their incompetence robs them of the ability to realize it. Charles Darwin sagely noted over a century ago, ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. So, how common is this? I have two examples for you. The first one is me. This is my third attempt to make a YouTube channel. The other two failed. I deleted the first channel and have no record of it, so you must take my words for it. The second one I did not delete, but just made the videos private, obviously to demonstrate my points in this video. My reflections on the past showed me that my Wheelerness was the reason for the failures, not my topic, nor the algorithm, nor the audience. I simply did not know what to expect, and therefore, I had unrealistic expectations. When those expectations were not met, I got discouraged, thought that the algorithm was against me or people were stupid and did not like what I had to say. Honestly, I thought that my videos were brilliant. I was, after all, speaking about something no one else had talked about on YouTube, at least in these 3 videos. But Mr. Beast says,
all you need to do, this applies to people who have not uploaded videos but have dreams of being a YouTuber, is make 100 videos and improve something every time. Do that. And then on your 101st video, we'll start talking, like maybe you can get some views, but you know, your first 100 are going to stop. There are very freak cases like Liza Koshy or Emma Chamberlain who have really good personalities and it doesn't take them as many videos. And it's just like people who are 7'5" and making the NBA. Like, yes, there are freak cases you can find, but for the average person like us, you know, who don't have these exceptional personalities and, you know, backgrounds in filmmaking, just make 100 videos, improve something each time, and then talk to me on your 101st video.
Well, the improve something each time is the tricky one. How do you improve something each time?
The second one, just, I don't know, put more effort into the script. The third one, try to learn a new editing trick. The fourth one, try to figure out a way that you can have better inflections in your voice. The fifth one, try to, you know, study a new thumbnail tip and implement it. The sixth one, try to figure out a new title. There's infinite ways. That's the beauty of content creation online. There's literally infinite ways, from the coloring to the frame rate, to the editing, to the filming, to the production, to the jokes, to the pacing, to every little thing can be improved, and they can never not be improved. There's literally no such thing as a perfect video.
Okay, but what could be the problems with the audio or the script or the visuals or the pace or this or that? I had no idea what to look for or how to find what was broken. And this was exactly what Dunning and Kruger showed in their first two experiments. They argued that metacognition is what makes me, Mr. Wheeler, and you able to recognize your incompetence. They claim that most often the skills that lead to your competence in a particular field are the same skills that enable you to evaluate your own competence. Those who are incompetent lack this metacognition ability relative to their more competent peers. Dunning and Kruger made 4 predictions and tried to show them through 4 experiments. First one was that the incompetent individuals compared to their more competent peers will dramatically overestimate their ability and performance relative to objective criteria. Just like when I thought my videos were as good as Veritasium or Bobby Broccoli. Dunning and Kruger asked volunteer undergraduates from Cornell University to take a couple of exams. The first one was about humor containing 30 jokes rated by averaging the ratings of 7 comedians from very funny to not funny at all in range 11 to 1. Students were asked to rate the jokes on the same scale. A student's raw score was taken to be the correlation coefficient between the student's rating and the average rating of the comedians. The raw score was between -1 for opposite rating and +1 for same rating. They then calculated the percentile score of students, dividing them into quartiles, and asked them to estimate their humor abilities compared to other people in percentile. And the results were fascinating. The bottom quartile on average performed at 12th percentile but estimated their humor abilities at 58th percentile. On average, the 65 students estimated their abilities at 66th percentile, 16 points above the average. The second and third quartiles also overestimated their abilities but less so than the bottom quartile. Interestingly, the top quartile with an average performance of 87th percentile estimated their abilities lower at 77th percentile. So the incompetent do really overestimate their own abilities. But you might argue that beauty is in the eye of beholder, meaning rating a joke is subjective and not every joke is supposed to be liked similarly by everyone.
There are certain words that white people cannot say, like the N-word. And there are certain words that black people cannot say, like the word ask. It's okay. Even your husband's like, come on, Bernice.
So they gave a new 20-question logic exam to another group of students. This time there was no beauty, no eyes, and no beholder. Because in logic there is an objective correct answer, like 2 + 2 makes 4. After the exam they asked the students to estimate their general logic ability in percentiles, as well as the number of correct answers they thought they produced and how their test would perform in percentile relative to their peers. The results matched the first exam. On average, 44 participants estimated their logic abilities and raw score performance at 66 and 61 percentiles respectively, but estimated 13.3 correct answers close to the actual 12.9. The bottom quartile performed at 12th percentile but estimated their abilities and raw score performance at 68 and 62 percentiles respectively. They also estimated 14.6 correct answers, 5 more than the actual average. This showed that the least competent participants overestimated their own performance significantly rather than underestimating others. Meanwhile, the top quartile underestimated their abilities, performance, and raw score again. So, the incompetent will overestimate their abilities and performance relative to an objective criterion. But did you notice how wrong the bottom performers were in estimating their own raw scores? 5 points more than actual. I thought the same about my videos. I did not see anything wrong with them, just like them not noticing they answered the questions wrong, or that the jokes they found funny were not funny at all. Making YouTube videos combines both experiments. There are things that have objective measure of quality, like pace, and there are elements that may seem subjectively good, but to the eyes of experts and consumers as judges don't seem really good. Because I did not know the correct answers, the objective criteria for evaluating my own work, I thought that I should go viral within the first few videos. While
Any of you listening, if you, especially if you have 0 videos on your channel, your first video is not going to get views. Period. It's not. Your first 10 are not going to get views. I can very confidently say that.
going viral has a formula. Further research into the topic of making videos taught me that I must make many changes to my videos to get it closer to that formula. For instance, my reading rate in the past was 140 words per minute. Luckily, every friend who watched my previous videos said I was too slow and boring. This was extremely useful negative feedback. Now I knew something wrong I could fix. But what would be the correct reading speed? Being a physicist, I measured Veritasium and Bobby Broccoli reading speed using a Python script that analyzed the transcripts of their videos. It turned out that the typical average is between 160 to 180 words per minute, or more accurately, a variable rate is preferred depending on the complexity of what is being said. My old version of this video averaged at 145 words per minute. Increasing the reading speed means I can squeeze more information in the same amount of time. But there are more important goals for adjusting the reading speed. One is not to lose you during the hook, the first 30 to 60 seconds of the video. And second, I don't want to lose you in the middle of the video. Both will damage the retention curve, leading to my video not being offered on the very limited real estates of YouTube. Before, this video's hook was more than 2 minutes long, but now, in just 1 minute, I tell the whole McAruthur Wheeler's story. Back to 5 years ago, in the first attempt which I deleted, I didn't even know reading speed was important, or the hook and the thumbnail and the title were special, or how my writing sounded were important. But the tempo, the rhythm, and the sound will keep your ears hooked and your attention glued till the end of every video. CGP Grey is a good example. He reads fast and sounds like poems.
Once upon a time, a dragon tyrannized the kingdom. Covered with thick black scales, its eyes glowed with hate, and from its terrible jaws flowed evil-smelling slime. Some tried to fight the dragon. Priests and magicians called down curses to no avail. Warriors armed with the best weapons attacked, only to be incinerated. The dragon's claws, jaws, and fire were so effective, its scaly armor so hard as to make it invincible. The dragon demanded from humankind a tribute, 10,000 men and women randomly chosen to be delivered every evening to the foot of the mountain to be eaten.
Or Maxinomics.
This video is about the one existential threat the Middle East worries about. It's the real reason Saudi Arabia will always side with America. A story that has rarely been told, an exact date, an exact time the Middle East morphed into what it is today. What happened on that date split the Middle East into two groups. Friends became enemies, neutral attitudes became aggressive. Through this story, the present and future Middle East comes into a perfect focus only achieved by a deep understanding of the selfishly crude world of oil, controlled not by the outsiders, the buyers of oil, but by the countries who would collapse if the price of oil went to zero, if the world stopped buying the one thing they have to sell.
He speaks at the whopping rate of 280 words per minute, at least in this video. But when you listen to him, it sounds like a poem. It has a tempo to it, a rhyme and a rhythm, and there is always a tension. He's indeed a good storyteller. Tension. Don't start me on that one because I had no idea I needed to create tension until my second channel. Tension, tempo, rhymes and rhythms I still have to work on. But you see, if I hadn't received the hint from my friends, I would never have realized I was too slow. Even after a million years watching millions of YouTube videos from top creators, I still wouldn't have realized that reading speed was important, or how packaging mattered, or tension was always needed. It was basically impossible to figure these out just by looking at other people's performance. Which brings us to the second and third predictions Dunning and Kruger made. Incompetent individual will suffer from deficient metacognitive skills in that they will be less able than their more competent peers to recognize competence when they see it, be it their own or anyone else's. Incompetent individual will be less able than their more competent peers to gain insight into their true level of performance by means of social comparison information. In particular, because of their difficulty recognizing competence in others, incompetent individuals will be unable to use information about the choices and performances of others to form more accurate impressions of their own ability. The third studies exam was about grammar and was done in two phases. In phase 1, as before, a group of students took the exam and the result of the first two exams were again reproduced. The bottom quartile vastly overestimated their abilities, performance and correct answer, while the top quartile underestimated their performance. Phase 2 was done a few weeks after phase 1. Bottom and top quartiles were asked to return to the lab. As a metacognitive task, they were asked to each grade a set of 5 tests completed by their peers with similar means and standard deviations, which was shared with them. After grading test packets, they looked at their own tests again and reevaluated their own raw scores, percentile general ability in grammar, and percentile test performance. To assess the metacognitive skills of the bottom and top quartile, Dunning and Kruger calculated the correlation coefficient of the student's grade given to the packets and the actual grades of the packets. On average, correlation coefficient for the bottom quartile was 0.37, while for the top quartile it was 0.66. This meant that bottom quartile had lower metacognitive skill compared to top quartile students because they failed to correctly grade their peers' work. Furthermore, bottom quartile failed to correctly estimate their own performance and raw score after grading performances better than their own, indicating their lower metacognition and inability to recognize a competent performance in themselves or others. So incompetents have a deficient metacognition, meaning they can't correctly grade their own or their peers' work, and they are incapable of learning from the competent performance of others by social comparison. Meanwhile, after evaluating their performance, the top quartile increased their estimation of percentile ability and test performance, but did not change their raw score estimation. This showed they overestimated others' performance, influenced by false consensus effect, believing their peers produced similar correct answers as they did when there was no evidence for it. After observing the contrary evidence, they correctly recalibrated their performance estimation without changing their raw score estimation, because observing others' poor performance wouldn't inform them about their own correct answers. Since I could not learn on my own simply by watching well-made YouTube videos, I needed to learn in other ways. Someone had to teach me, or at least show me which threads to pull. Thus came an era of learning and education, learning about what is important. The biggest problem I had was that my videos did not get impressions, meaning the algorithm did not present my content to people. Searching to find out why showed me that this curve, the retention curve, is a major metric in assessing the quality of my videos. It seems that YouTube's algorithm is designed to find an audience who's willing to watch the content to the end, turning this to this. The more people watch the video for longer, the more advertisements YouTube can show, making more money. But the content itself needs to be made in a certain way so the retention curve can be improved by the algorithm. There is an objective correct answer to this. I said that I sped up my reading compared to the old versions. If you look at this old curve, you see that within the first 55 seconds, the percentage of people watching up to that moment drops down to 49%. This is bad, really bad. Within 60 seconds, I lose 50% of my viewers. But why? Well, thanks to April and Alter, Colin and Samir, and many others on YouTube, I learned that the hook is not the only thing to keep you hooked. It is also the packaging, the thumbnail and the title. I need to give you enough reasons to make the choice and click on my video. I created a curiosity gap by juxtaposing text and invisible face and told you in the title that I was going to shatter your illusions of yourself. Then in the hook, I immediately rewarded you with what you expected from the thumbnail and title you saw. At least I thought I did. If I showed you this thumbnail and title instead, you would be bored within 30 seconds because you would not receive an immediate reward that told you you were in the right place. You were promised something, but instead I showed you something else. This is why the hook goes with the thumbnail and title. They promise you something and the hook needs to immediately deliver it. Of course, I had no idea during my first attempt at YouTube and during the second run that this was important. I thought starting with the thumbnail was enough, but there is more that goes into the hook. Videos like this and this showed me what is important, what the recipe is, that I need a plot promise, the thing you will get out of my video. A curiosity gap, creating an urge to needing to know in your mind. And looking back at my old videos, I recognized these were missing. Now I better understand what Mr. Beast meant when he said,
all you need to do, this applies to people who have not uploaded videos but have dreams of being a YouTuber, is make 100 videos and improve something every time. Do that. And then on your 101st video, we'll start talking, like maybe you can get some views, but you know, your first 100 are going to suck. For the average person like us, you know, who don't have these exceptional personalities and, you know, backgrounds in filmmaking, just make 100 videos, improve something each time, and then talk to me on your 101st video.
Well, the improve something each time is the tricky one. How do you improve something each time?
The second one, just, I don't know, put more effort into the script. The third one, try to learn a new editing trick. The fourth one, try to figure out a way that you can have better inflections in your voice. The fifth one, try to, you know, study a new thumbnail tip and implement it. The sixth one, try to figure out a new title. There's infinite ways. That's the beauty of content creation online. There's literally infinite ways, from the coloring to the frame rate, to the editing, to the filming, to the production, to the jokes, to the pacing, to every little thing can be improved, and they can never not be improved. There's literally no such thing as a perfect video.
But what I basically did was learning how to make good YouTube videos, the formula. What makes me able to recognize the problems in my videos is knowing the right way to make videos. I got it by educating myself and practicing it. And this was exactly the fourth prediction Dunning and Kruger made. The incompetent can gain insight about their shortcomings, but this comes paradoxically by making them more competent, thus providing them the metacognitive skills necessary to be able to realize that they have performed poorly. To show this, Dunning and Kruger gathered 140 volunteer undergraduates for a 10-question logic exam featuring the Watson selection task. For example, given cohort 4, 7, A and B and the rule that if there is a vowel on one side, there must be an odd number on the other side, participants had to determine which course to turn to validate the rule. You can pause here to guess the answer. After the exam, participants estimated their general logic ability, test score performance, and the number of correct answers. Again, results mirrored the previous exams. The bottom quartile overestimated their abilities and performance, while the top quartile underestimated theirs. In the second part, 140 students were randomly divided into two groups. One group received a class on logical syllogism, while the other one did an unrelated task. Then all the students regraded their tests and re-estimated their logic ability, test score percentile, and raw score performance. Just like before, researchers divided each group into 4 quartiles based on their raw percentile scores. They predicted that after training, the incompetent would be able to better determine their right and wrong answers. They also predicted that the incompetent would become more accurate in their self-estimation of their ability and grades. The only changes in self-ratings of raw test performance of untrained group were in the bottom and third quartile, but in the wrong direction. However, those who had training corrected their estimations. The bottom and second quartile self-rating of logic abilities decreased significantly. The test performance self-rating also dropped significantly. The top quartile increased the test performance self-rating by 12.1 percentile. Finally, the raw score estimations for the bottom 3 quartile became as accurate as those of the top quartile. This increased accuracy in self-grading among the trained group proved the incompetent can become more accurate in self-assessment of their grades. Mixed model ANOVA analysis revealed that the corrections in self-assessments depended on the quartile. For bottom quartile, the self-estimation of general abilities, test performance, and raw scores improved with training, while for top quartile, only self-estimation of raw score and test performance improved with training. Using mediational analysis, they showed that lower scores were associated with inflated self-estimates and inability to correctly grade their own papers, which is the metacognitive task. The analysis also showed that the metacognitive deficit was also linked to inflated self-estimates. For example, among the untrained group, lower quartiles showed more miscalibrated self-assessments along with worse grade estimations. Furthermore, the mediation analysis among bottom and top quartiles of both groups revealed that trained students provided less inflated self-estimates and better test grading than untrained group. Regression analysis showed that the worse the students were in grading their own papers, the metacognitive task, the more inflated their self-estimates were. The metacognitive deficit predicted the inflated self-estimates while training alone did not. So, when you gain the knowledge that allows you to answer the questions correctly, you gain the ability to realize which questions you answered wrong, and you become able to recognize this in others' performance. This is metacognition improvement. I learned how to match the hook with the thumbnail and title. I saw the problems, and I rewrote this whole video to fix them and improve it. I think, well, we'll see in the retention curve and click-through rate and number of views and watch hours if these fixes worked. But wait a second, I almost forgot. I told you I had 2 examples. The first one was my own YouTube journey, and the second, well, let me get to it before I make my conclusions. If you search for Dunning-Kruger effect, you're presented with Mount a Stupid graph. But ironically, it has nothing to do with Dunning-Kruger effect. It means to represent your learning process, that when you learn a little, you feel overconfident about your skills. But as you learn more, you realize how much you don't know, losing all confidence. Yet, we saw that in Dunning-Kruger effect, the minuscule amount of knowledge and extreme overconfidence blinds you from recognizing how bad you're doing and realizing how much you don't know. It assumes that over time, learning happens kind of magically and your confidence bounces back. Yet, learning may not necessarily happen as it needs external feedback. Internal feedback is provided by metacognition, and when you lack metacognition, only external feedback remains. And I was the showcase for that. It is also used to illustrate a quote wrongly attributed to Charles Bukowski. The problem with the world is that intelligent people are full of doubt while the stupid ones are full of confidence. Lastly, as we saw, the real Dunning-Kruger graph is this one, and Mount a Stupid graph is nowhere to be found in their paper. I know, right? How could they not know that this graph was a bad description of Dunning-Kruger effect? Worse, when you watch those videos, many of them only present a small segment of the story. You can be so stupid that you don't know how stupid you are and leave the other 3 predictions out. So it seems someone at some point used this graph to explain Dunning-Kruger effect, and everyone just copied it without learning what Dunning-Kruger effect was really about, without reading the paper itself. They failed to recognize the wrong answer in others and their own works, which is the essence of Dunning-Kruger effect. Now, to do you a good service, I have to answer 2 more questions the smart ones among you will have. First, we know that we overestimate ourselves by default, and we also know that learning improves our self-estimation. But why don't we sometimes learn our lessons from our failures? 3 reasons can explain this. First, the source of negative feedback is often someone else, like a teacher or a parent. As adults, people usually avoid giving us negative feedback to avoid confrontation. I was lucky to find out I was a slow reader. Second, the negative feedback can be delayed, like Wheeler's story, where we only realize our mistakes after getting into trouble. Third, success has many prerequisites. For example, succeeding in academic research requires appropriate knowledge, correct self-assessment, the right team, the right project, timing, and effort. You also need to get lucky, just like Lucky Luke. Missing any one of these will lead to failure, and claiming otherwise means claiming that when Elon Musk is missing one of these at SpaceX, he still can send 6/7 of a rocket to Mars. However, in reality, when we fail, we normally blame the failure on our bad luck or our team members rather than our own incompetence. This is why we never learn. Now, the second question. If learning is the only solution to correcting our overestimation of our own abilities, is it still possible that despite having knowledge, we overestimate our abilities? Yes, this can happen under certain circumstances. One example is when knowledge in a field does not translate to skills and competence. For instance, someone might understand all the strategies and positions in basketball and know how to train players but cannot play the game themselves. We call this person the coach. In general, when competence requires another ability, such as physical skill, overestimation can occur. Additionally, for the incompetent to overestimate themselves, they need a minimal threshold of knowledge, theory, or experience that makes them believe they can generate correct answers. Like when one feeds you this figure as the real Dunning-Kruger effect when in fact it is not true. But in some domains, it's obvious we can't compete with the expert because of limited experience, like facing Khabib Nurmagomedov in the octagon after a month of boxing classes or challenging Magnus Carlsen in chess after solving a few puzzles. However, still you could watch a YouTube video thinking you would do better even though you knew nothing about making videos, and yet after 1 year of working hard you still didn't know why you didn't get any impressions and views. As Jordan Peterson says,
I think what contributes to the siloing is the arrogance that goes along with it. Because if you can be interested in ideas and you can be creative, well, that's the arrogance of the intellect, right? That's the thing the Catholic Church had warned about for centuries, is the arrogance of the intellect. So, because if you're wise as well as smart, and there is no relationship between being smart and being wise, they are not the same thing. There's no quick pathway from smart to wise. And many of the people who I've known who were very wise some of them were intellectually impaired and were still wise, you know. So it's the arrogance that brings up the block. So you can have your cake and eat it too, but you have to not assume that your niche makes you superior.
we are in danger of our arrogance and ignorance more than we think. And one way it manifests itself is Dunning-Kruger effect, where because you don't have the objective criteria in your knowledge, you dramatically overestimate your own ability. You also won't be able to recognize the competent from incompetent performance in yourself or others. And you won't be able to learn from observing competent people because you don't know what to look for, and perhaps arrogantly think that you don't need to learn from them because you think you're doing awesome. But only by acquiring the practical and theoretical knowledge, the one that allows you to perform well and arms you with the criteria to assess your performance, can you gain the metacognitive skill needed to escape Dunning-Kruger effect. These have significant effects on our lives and the society. For example, if you have no knowledge of economics, human behavior, and human psychology, how could you possibly know if certain policies are good or bad for you, your family, or your country? If you haven't successfully run a country, How do you know who will be better for leading it? The rabbit hole of humans' illusion of themselves and their illusion of knowledge run deeper, and I'm afraid we are out of time here. But in the future, if this YouTube adventure works and brings me bread, I will talk about it. Thus, we can only escape our ignorance through learning, critical thinking, and practice over time. There is an old Persian poem I think encompasses all the manifestations of our relationship with our arrogance, our knowledge, and our intellect, and it says, "Anyone who knows and wants to know more will reach the highest levels of happiness. Anyone who knows and knows that he knows will ride the horse of wisdom to the vault of heaven. Anyone who knows and does not know that he knows is a thirsty person holding a vase full of water. Anyone who does not know but knows that he doesn't know will get to his destination riding his lame, limping donkey regardless. Anyone who does not know and wants to know will release his body and soul from the prison of ignorance. Anyone who doesn't know and does not know that he doesn't know will remain in double ignorance for eternity. Anyone who doesn't know and does not want to know, that's a pity that such an animal remains alive." Then, if your illusions of yourself is not shattered yet, think about this. You're after all in one of those quartiles, and statistically, there is a 75% chance you're overestimating yourself. You can't just delude yourself you're doing well without testing yourself objectively against an objective criterion. It feels good to delude yourself that you know and want to know more, but most of the time, it is your arrogance that makes you feel good, not actually the happiness of reaching the top. It is just a lie you tell yourself. One thing you can do, for example, in discussions and arguments about politics and other topics with your friends, is that before you jump to recite what you heard or read somewhere, or the talking points you and your friends keep repeating in your little bubble, ask yourself, what do I know about this topic? The opinion I'm about to utter, do I really know how it works? Can I articulate a causal explanation that explains what is to happen step by step if my opinion becomes reality? What am I missing? What is it that I don't know? How many hours have I spent reading books about this topic? How many books are there that explain different aspects of this topic? Always assume that you don't know enough and believe it. Then you will listen and read better because you're seeking to know more. You won't radically defend your position, especially after failing to articulate a causal explanation, and instead, it will be easier to assume that the person you're talking to knows something you don't. Then you will be eager to incorporate what you learned in your knowledge, read more, think more, and separate the wheat from chaff, and form an opinion that is uniquely yours, that you know it in and out, and can disassemble it into its constituent parts, the reasons, theories, assumptions, data, analysis of data, implications of data, and your unique point of view, and not just a blind recitation of someone else's opinion. This is how you will ride your lame, limping donkey to your destination and ensure that you're not stuck in double ignorance or a pity, a waste of air to be alive.